to SOCB50, Deviance and Normality. Just show of hands so everyone can see. Put up your hand if you were in my intro class recently. Okay, good. So my indoctrination plan is working of inculcating my students into the university. So for those who haven't met me, my name is Lawrence Williams. I should be graduating this August, actually. So I've made the joke with my previous students that, if I don't graduate, then you were kind of taught by this random deviant PhD student. So hopefully, I'm having my oral defense where I talk about what I've done for like 2 hours. Kind of freaked out about that. But now I'm kind of like in your guys' seats. I'm finishing up my dissertation. In this course, we'll read one of my articles on pedophilia. So I talked about that with my previous students. We'll see that later in the term. My sociological interests are basically around how people make difficult decisions. So I've looked at how people get stuck in jobs, how people make career moves, how people deal with kind of unwanted desires and sexualities. And it kind of began with my research on video game addiction. I used to want to be a pro gamer in my youth, years ago, well, 12, 15 years ago anyway. So this course, Deviance and Normality, I've taught once before, and it should be a lot of fun. So we'll go over the syllabus. For those of you transitioning from first year, you'll find the readings are very different. And for maybe those of you in other years. I want to get a sense of the class. So show of hands for people who are entering second year. So all you intros, you're entering second year, right? Okay. Entering third year, so as of September. Entering third year, entering fourth year. Okay. Finishing up around now. Okay. Great. So we have the whole board. So the whole gamut's here. So those of you in upper years, I'm sure you've read journal articles directly. Every reading we have, with the exception of a few of the tyranny book chapters, they are journal articles. Now I know from teaching journal articles in the past, particularly to second year and third year students, sometimes they can be very intimidating. But the design of my lectures and my lecture slides is really to simplify them and tell you kind of what I think the main points are. So you still have to read them, but I do know, again, particularly the dated ones, so when we're reading like direct sources from Merton and Hershey and all these important theorists, they're quite dense. I recommend reading them before lecture, of course, but part of why I'm having this recorded is that you can use me as a resource to help you make sense of them. I'm definitely an advocate, as my intro students know, of doing the readings before class. I made them do a whole bunch of quizzes, so you don't have any quizzes or anything like that. But that's to kind of get students in the mindset of reading before class. In a perfect world, you'd read before class, you'd come to lecture, and then you would read afterwards. But I know everyone's time is limited. So I taught this course once at St. George, and my teaching style has changed quite a bit, thanks to my lovely intro students helping me boost my teaching confidence. So unlike that term where it took me, I guess it was a full year class and it took me maybe 15 weeks to open up, you get the benefit maybe, or you're like, what the hell am I doing in this class? But you get the benefit of me being a bit more candid early on. So this is just, I'm planting a little seed, but this also speaks to the course theme. So I do have a YouTube channel, and in the past, for my intro class, I've made videos for my students. I did a Shakespeare rendition for my St. George class on social psychology. So I'm open to ideas. So in terms of things that you think will be useful for this class, or useful for my own deviant career as a YouTube influencer, I like to blend the things that I'm doing. So here you see the cartoon face was actually a drawing of me that I hired one of my students to make of me. So there's always potential employment opportunities. So that's me. That's me in real life. And so deviance and normality. Although, again, if I become a successful YouTube star and like artist hirer, then maybe that will be the normal one and that will be the deviant. Like, what was I thinking there, right? So we'll see a theme in this course is that deviance is relative, right? So the reason it took me, I'm bringing up this story, it took me 15 weeks. And I was really spooked and thought, like, what am I doing? No one in the department has a YouTube channel. Very few people even do web option, which I'll discuss soon. We have that here. But a lot of what we think is unaccepted and the norms that we follow, some things really are rigidly held and people will, scold you for doing it. But many things that we think are deviant are actually changing over time. So again, my history as a kind of wannabe pro gamer in the mid-90s, that was much more marginal than it is now. Now esports are a thing, Twitch streamers, YouTube, all of this stuff kind of exploded it. And I think like, damn, if only I was, born 15 years later, I could have been, a lit gamer or whatever the hell. But now I'm just this like old fart coming in and saying, oh, in my time I was marginalized. But it was okay, but you get the point. So anyway, so deviance, again, we'll see. The title of this course is Deviance and Normality, but I think as a sociologist, to get kind of the relative nature of deviance, how it impacts our lives, thinking I can't do X activity because people will think I'm weird, they'll think I'm whatever, getting face tattoos, joining a certain cult. They can be more extreme, less extreme, dropping out of school the way that I did, that made me feel deviant when I was a teenager. In order to really understand deviance, I think it's good to start off with the study of crime. So the arc of this course, we'll see, it goes both chronologically and kind of thematically. We'll start kind of with early studies of crime and then see how the study of crime led to the development not only of criminology, but really to the study of the breaking of social norms and traditions and really just accepted and expected codes of conduct for people. So that's at the heart of, when people are feeling in a Durkheimian sense, so you all know Durkheim, when people are feeling anomic or restless or kind of like they don't fit in, they can turn to crime or they can turn to, more subtle forms of deviance. They can be quirky, they can fit in between different spaces. So this week, again, is just a general overview. I like to not have readings on week one, just so we can kind of orient ourselves, get to know one another. So I'll be mixing in a kind of general introduction with some of the course requirements and ending with a kind of more direct discussion of the syllabus, our course contract. So any questions so far? All right, so again, this is just meant to orient you. Okay, so the study of crime and deviance. So criminology as a field is newer, so it's kind of a paradox. The study of crime has always existed, because crime has always existed, but as a field, criminology is actually newer than sociology. Part of this is that the study of crime often just relied on people's common sense ideas about what crime is. Because, unlike studying things like gender and race and politics, things that are murky, crime seems relatively straightforward. It's people deciding to violate the laws of the community, right? So that kind of view we'll see orients the beginning of the field. That was what's called rational choice theory. We'll see that next week. Lends itself also to routine activities theory when we go through the syllabus. But basically, criminology formed as a discipline when crime rates really spiked, mostly in Britain, and crime rates were spiking after major social upheavals and wars, and people were starting to question that idea of saying, is it enough to just say that people are choosing to commit crime? Maybe there's other things going on. Maybe there are social influences. Maybe there are patterns we can look at. But common sense, common sense is a vexing or continually problematic issue in the field as well. Because there is something to common sense. As those of you who took my intro class would remember, there are so many theoretical ways of viewing any issue that sometimes, and we overload things with big theories. But sometimes it just makes sense to look at things from the quote-unquote common sense point of view. Because what is common sense? Anyone, if you had to define what common sense is, let's say what common sense is in the context of like this classroom or something. Yeah.
Well, I think common sense in general is you already know something without someone telling you.
Right, so it's your kind of intuitive sense. And so to go one step further, where do you get that? Do you just have that naturally? Yeah.
I would say it's something you think you know that you think no one's told you, but you've actually like internalized like culture and society.
Yes, exactly. So common sense, we'll see this in the field as well. Common sense is often criticized. In university, sometimes professors, I try not to do this, but professors will say like, don't write about your opinion, write an argument, write an essay. Opinions and common sense are often seen as just your own kind of personal, idiosyncratic views. But people's common sense come from their lived experiences. Often, intuitive, automatic, things you're not thinking up, things you're just picking up as you're living. So people's common sense idea that murder is bad or rape is bad, and we'll see over time, things like rape weren't even legally wrong, right? So obviously our common sense has changed over time with women's rights and various minority rights. Think of the awful treatment of African Americans, particularly in the slavery era. Not that it's perfect now by any means, but think of what common sense would have been then. So common sense is always socialized, right? So we'll see just this quote. I find it funny because it says, the good and bad of common sense when doing research. So is criminology, the kind of question is, it's easy to think as academics, we're debunking common sense and we're going to tell you kind of how things are. But is it that simple? So kind of for common sense, the common person, their head unencumbered by fancy theories and abstract professional notions, can at least see what's right there in front of their nose. Philosophies as disparate as pragmatism and Zen enshrine a respect for the common person's ability to see with Sancho Panza what a windmill is really, that a windmill is really a windmill. So again, sometimes we get lost in our ideas, but common sense brings us back to reality and says, okay, maybe I can theorize about the nature of crime and I can start to think all these interesting things about why people do things. But ultimately, in my community, this is seen as a heinous act. That's something I dealt a lot with when I was studying pedophilia and seeing people's rationalizations for what they were doing. I always had to say, okay, I can't go too far with this theory because I know that this is seen as a major issue of lack of consent and a violation of like child's rights and everything. So this is going to seem, you don't have to totally understand everything I'm saying right now for this. But in this course, every week we touch on different theories. And so I'm bringing this up just to anchor you by saying every theory kind of tries to fully explain a situation. But keeping kind of your common sense in mind, when you read theories, sometimes they may not totally sell you on their ideas. And that's a good thing. That means you're reading actively using ideas you've learned in the past. Now, on the other hand though, again, this is the iterative process, critical thinking, common sense, in one of its meanings, can also delude us. That common sense is the traditional wisdom of the tribe, the melange of what everyone knows, that children learn as they grow up. It's ultimately the stereotypes of everyday life. So criminology has this history of coming, again, it emerged out of people's common sense, and you'll see this more in the readings next week, so don't worry about all of this. But criminology emerged out of kind of the collective consciousness, the big common sense coming together of people saying, our moral system's in decay, all of these people are committing crimes, what do we do to address this? And so it was common sense that sparked the development of more refined theories. And I think this is kind of, not to get self-helpy, but this is kind of a lifelong process that I think we're all in, of questioning our assumptions, learning new theories, then questioning those. For example, someone tells me, let's say I was raised in this society, which I was, and I'm told, you should go to university because that's good for you. I may be critical of that. I was when I dropped out of school. I said, no, I want to be a pro gamer. I tried that, and it didn't necessarily work, and I found myself going back to school. However, that whole process gave me a very different kind of subjective insight into the idea that university is good for everyone. In fact, I taught my undergrads, my students last term, of things like McDonaldization, credentialization, which is kind of like my way of getting back at that. And I share the frustration with you, with everyone. Not that you necessarily have it, but someone's theory that education's going to be great for you and it does what and it'll give you a good job. You could then say, I'm going in debt in for this. I'm taking courses I don't want to take. So again, every theory you learn, take with a grain of salt, but realize that grain of salt actually has validity to it. It's not just you not understanding the theory. So as I said, actively read these articles and jot down when they don't make sense to you, because it may not be not making sense. It may be you disagreeing with it, right? So, and then catalog that and think, wow, I disagree with this based on not just my common sense, but on something maybe I learned in another class, something I saw in the news. And as the course goes on, you'll be learning new theories which will contradict. So again, this I think if you read it if you approach any course with that mindset, that what you're learning are not absolute truths, but are just kind of perspectives that have been studied and tested. It's not just random nonsense we're indoctrinating you with, hopefully. But they're approximations of the truth, but they're not perfect. If they were, then we wouldn't need a university. Someone would just record a lecture and you would just learn all of it and then we'd be done. So everything's debatable. Again, it's how you do well in university and in jobs and in life and in arguments is by bringing kind of valid criticism to bear, not just saying, no, this goes against my common sense, or no, but using evidence in an appropriate way. So the overall kind of theme in this course, again, and in any sociology or any science or humanities or anything you'd learn in university or higher education, the ultimate thing is to question our common sense beliefs. Again, we'll see this next week, the idea that people are just choosing crime, choosing to deviate, looking at what social pressures influence that. Ultimately, that's the running theme of the course and any kind of university course on crime or deviance. Seeing, we all have the potential to choose to attack someone or rob a store. We all have that agency, but what makes that unthinkable for most of us? Most of us would never even, maybe you might be in a fit of rage with someone, think, I want to do something. But what is constraining you? And as a sociologist, you could see how do people vary in that. Historically, which people have had, less constraining things. You'll see in the study of crime and deviance, a lot of the terms you would have learned in other classes also get kind of flipped over. Constraint in this sense is actually a good thing. Having a full-time job, having a lot of money, having a spouse and children, those all kind of constrain you from becoming deviant, right? So deviant in your own mind. So for example, let's say I want to go and get a whole bunch of really cool face tattoos and just put lit and lit and lit all over my face. No, I'm constrained by that because I think, I might lose my job. Maybe I'll get more YouTube views though, I don't know. But I might lose my job, I might lose my partner. People will look at me on the street. So I'm constrained from that. Whereas let's say, I was abused at home and I ran away and I didn't have any friends or anyone, then I'm free to do that. So sometimes agency isn't always a good thing. And we'll see that's actually a common finding, that people kind of age out of crime due to getting more constraints. So when people do get, particularly, these studies are mostly of men. Men do commit crime, on average more than women, kind of arrestable crimes anyway. You'll find that the age crime curve, as they call it, it's not just necessarily that the guys are maturing or becoming wise or anything, but they're getting wives and children. And then those constrain them from doing people that are married are less likely to commit crime, people with money, and again, it's often just that thought of, what do I have to lose? And again, when you think of people in their darkest times, again, I've taught mental health, and it's something very personal to me, people in their last hours, in their darkest moments feel, literally, they have nothing to lose. So again, this course, you'll see commitments, responsibilities, things that may seem negative at times are actually the things that prevent people in those moments from kind of just going off. So a lot of themes we'll see. Again, this deviance is always core in all the research I do because I'm just very interested in how people do things they want, but then constrain themselves and kind of alternate between those things. And a key theme in this course, again, we'll be seeing, you'll often see, we don't call people criminals anymore, so you'll see criminals in quotes, because again, we're shifting away from a view that a criminal is just some nasty person to someone that was kind of pushed into this space where they feel nothing is stopping them from violating, or that violating a norm or rule is the only way they can get from point A to point B. Again, as sociologists, we're not, you'll see this in the later slide, we're not labeling things as deviant or criminal or justifying crimes, but we're just trying to explain them and see, okay, how is it that people come to these decisions? So again, just as a warning, when I'm talking about things being deviant or criminal, it's not me judging them. I try not to be a judgmental person, but it's more just understanding how people get into that headspace. Okay, so believe me, what the hell, study buddy question. So before we get to the study buddy question, so as I said, I'll kind of mix in the syllabus stuff. One of my experiments in my intro class was to have my students develop tight dyadic pair bonds with one another, aka lifelong study buddies. So I found it was successful, and some people, I asked them, it's a way to make friends. More history about myself. I went to U of T. I was at St. George campus for undergrad and my master's and my PhD, so I've been here 10 years. That's why I want to graduate this summer. But I know it's very isolating a lot of the time. The Scarborough campus is a lot better in that way. I find people are more tight-knit, smaller campus kind of thing lends itself to that. But I know that it's still hard to meet people. So I think this is a good practice to do. So I'll give you each a card, and so before we get to the study buddy question, so if you guys take one and pass them around. Before we get to the study buddy question, I would like you to make your study buddies. So what is a study buddy? So, and you can move around. So again, I'll come to you. So the class, because of web option, in part, I know the attendance may not always be super high. So if people can move around and closer to the, you don't necessarily have to move closer to the front, but if people can kind of get in pairs or triplets, that would be useful for this class. Because we're going to have a lot of these study buddy activities. I'll get to how they're graded later, but because there's tutorials and stuff. But yeah, don't be afraid to come near the front. It looks better on camera because then it makes the class look more full than it is, right? So, okay. All right, so for this, I just want you to introduce yourself. So I want a few things. I'll just write on the board. And then you keep these cards. Sometimes you'll give the cards back to me, but this one I want you to keep. Well, you'll take your partner's card. So you'll see, so name, year, / like program, major, whatever. Year, major, and summer. Well, even though you're in summer school, you can still have summer plans. So I want to know how much this course is like destroying your summer plans. No, but just what are you going to have a summer? Are you going to do other things? Going to go back home? Going to do whatever? So just the kind of fun thing. How you're going to be spending your time? Are you taking a full course load? Whatever. So it's just things to get to know with one another. So ask your study buddy these questions and write them on a card. And you'll keep that card. So you'll have your study buddy's information. Yeah, so that's the idea. And so maybe here, put contact info. So you're writing down their info because you're taking it down. And we can all read our own writing better than someone else's, right? So you're getting info from them. And don't lose that card, because that's your, if you miss something, you want to ask something, just, makes all our lives easier. So you have someone, you take turns, taking notes, doing whatever. So name, major. All right, so in just a minute or so we'll continue. So the plan with the study buddies is, it's someone, again, to help you personalize the course, so that you have someone you can answer questions with throughout the term. Ideally, you can be in the same tutorials, although, you may be in different ones. The tutorials should be the same, though, anyway. It's the same person doing them, so that's not a huge deal. All right, so now that you have your study buddy, boom, kind of prompting you just to, again, get our common senses out so you can start refining them, thinking about them. So what is, I told you we're going to be kind of, unpacking this word over the term, but what is a criminal in your opinion, and why or how are you and your study buddies not criminals? So what is because I just want to kind of see how you're all defining that. How you're defining crime and criminals. So for these questions, if you have a sheet of paper, that would be useful. If not, I can give you another card. I'll just do cards today, and then you can do a sheet of paper with your group.
You're assuming that we identify as not criminals, right?
I'm assuming you, yes. Some of you may identify. So I would never want anyone to have to out themselves in this class. So I'm assuming you don't identify as a criminal. So if you do, you're welcome to say that, but don't write it on the card, because if I get subpoenaed or something, I'd have to say it. So I'm assuming you're not identifying as criminals. So again, this is just to get, I'll give you a couple. And so whenever there are study buddy questions on the board, they will be written and submitted to me. So I need your name and student number on either a card or a sheet of paper to answer the question. So we'll get to participation later, but again, these are kind of pass-fail things that we'll be doing, just so I know who's coming and, little bonuses for coming to class. Yeah, 4's fine. Yeah. You can merge study buddy groups. You can have, it's fine having more people. Nope. Writing on the same one's fine. Yeah, so writing on the same card is fine. So just discuss, and maybe if you have very different opinions, you can write those down if they agree. Again, these are just ways to get us all thinking. Okay. So does anyone want to share what them and their group members came up with for what a criminal is, in their opinion? Yep.
So we said that a criminal is someone who violates the rights of others to the extent that they have broken the law multiple times or committed a single criminal act of extreme severity, such as murder.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the idea of extent or degree is very useful there. So we all violate one another's rights a little bit sometimes, but not necessarily enough to become criminal. Okay, so anything else? Yep.
You said there's something about Like, we had the example of like jaywalking,
Yeah.
but like we don't feel like we're criminals because we didn't get caught. Yeah, like that's breaking a law, but there's something about it being like official.
Right, well think of even on the new streetcars, TTC fare evasion. They were showing something like 40% of people were doing that, and I don't think most people doing that would really self-identify as criminals. They'd probably say, oh yeah, I guess I kind of shouldn't be doing that. But yeah, yep.
And I would say like intent has like a large like degree to it, because I would say like if you're hurting someone like while doing it, considered more criminal than not. Like jaywalking, you're not really hurting someone. Let's say if you do bank robbing or something, you take someone's money or like a business or something, then you think like, okay, someone's being harmed, so that means it's wrong.
Yeah, and intent matters. And so sometimes we'll see too that that's really interesting. There's kind of unintentional crime and deviance. But I think for someone to really see themselves as a criminal or as a deviant, again, it would be, am I deliberately doing this to kind of, embrace taboos and kind of say F you to people's norms? Or am I kind of a victim of happenstance? And it's more, I was caught doing something that I knew was wrong, or I didn't realize I was breaking a law. There's often a lot of murky cases, as we'll see particularly later in the term, around kind of how crime and deviance intersect with your identity. Okay, great. Okay. Huh? Oh yeah, sorry, yeah, of course. Why are you and your group members not criminals? Yep.
Because we haven't been charged with anything.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why it was a great question in the beginning of, are you assuming we're not criminals? And yes, because part of the criminal definition that I think is important is the official labeling. So, you wouldn't be, maybe you have a criminal history, but I'm assuming you're not criminals right now, or you could be fugitives going by different names or something. Maybe UTSC is like a harbor of that. I don't know, but no, maybe. But I'm assuming that it's not. So yes, yeah. So I think that's the key thing. Part of why we move away from the term criminal is, again, getting rid of all those loaded questions of motive, of, again, thinking, as we'll see next week with rational choice theory and stuff, the idea that people were just choosing to be crime, or positivistically, as we'll see, biologically, that they were kind of living out criminal urges, that now it's more, no, a dominant institution didn't label you as a criminal. Someone who pirates online, many people stream things online. They're not going to view themselves necessarily as criminals, because they're not being labeled as that. They might be in a certain circumstance, but no.
Well, isn't another part with crimes like jaywalking and pirating, isn't it also very important that there needs to be a victim of sorts? And even though technically there is with pirating, if there's an idea that if you were never planning to purchase it in the first place, even if you weren't able to pirate it, doesn't that mean that there's technically not a victim?
That's a debate. I would personally say no, because there are many things like that. So same with TTC fare evasion, right? You could say, well, I wouldn't have gone on this streetcar anyway. I would have walked. If everyone does that, it's kind of called, not the bystander effect, but there's, it's the bystander effect and the freeloading effect. That if everyone starts to think that, then they could justify their way to saying, oh, well, I would never watch a movie in a theater, I would never pay to be in this class, I would never do that, so then I can just do it anyway. That is a kind of philosophical debate that people have over victimless crimes. But then when you think of the victim, right, so let's say my YouTube channel becomes like really intense and lit and whatever and popular. And I have like thousands of subscribers. And then I quit teaching, quit doing anything else. But I survive on YouTube ads. But then some people find a way to like screen cap my YouTube videos, and then they share them around so people don't have to watch my ads. And then they say, well, I wouldn't have watched his videos, even though they're lit, with the ads, because I don't have internet or I don't have whatever. And then everyone starts doing that, and then my fan base goes down, and then I can't make my videos anymore. So it would be things, and so they can ripple to that.
Well, isn't that making an assumption that people are just using it as an excuse then, and that if there wasn't that option, they wouldn't actually pay for it?
Well, we have no way of knowing. That's the thing, right? So that's the issue with pirating. That's why it's illegal in the government's eyes, because it's that, well, technically anyone could justify that by saying that. So let's say I did have the money to buy the video, but I just like kind of wanted it right now, or I had the money to go in the streetcar. That's the whole laws, and these are fantastic questions though. We'll see the law often tries to be blind to those murky issues, which causes problems for disenfranchised populations for sure. But the reasoning sometimes is that, well, would it then be fair for wealthy people to then make the same claim and say, well, no, that money's going to my son's like extracurricular classes, not to, you know, buying this video game for him. And so, yeah. But those great people debate about these things all the time, and the nature or extent of victimless crimes. So great. So these fit the crime questions. And again, the pirating topic's personal to me, only because someone in my PhD cohort, so the same year as me, so I've been debating with him about this for 6 years. He studies pirating and iTunes and all that stuff. So it's always, every month, lively debates with our kind of cohort about the nature of pirating. So it's fascinating stuff. And again, no right or wrong, it's a very gray area. So when studying crime, again, we'll move to deviance soon. The questions we ask, what type of crime are we analyzing? So looking at people's common sense notions, again, things like fare evasion and pirating, the question of intent, the question of, you know, are you really harming anyone? That's very different to most of our common sense views. So the reason why many of us could see, myself included, really, as pirating as often relatively victimless, relies on our common sense notions that, you know, well, it's not hurting anyone, versus something like murder, or something like, you know, abuse, physical harm, or psychological torture. Those have clear kind of victims and clear consequences that people deem, you know, totally unacceptable due to widespread norms. Again, as we'll see later in the term, things like marital rape, so the rape of typically in a heterosexual couple of a wife by a husband, that wasn't even a thing 50 years ago, right? So our common sense, why I say we need to keep reanalyzing it, it comes from the norms and values in a system, not just things we kind of spontaneously, emergently believe. What kind of explanations of crime are we looking for? So are we looking for why people commit a crime? Are we looking for which types of people commit a crime? Again, by types of people, I don't mean, you know, in like a totally personal sense. I mean, do older or younger people commit this crime, men or women? You know, people in school, people outside of school. These are all sociological questions we'll ask. So for explanations of crime, again, who does it? Why are they doing it? What consequences does it have? For who decides what is a crime? Again, things like pirating make those questions more salient, but oftentimes it is just, you know, whatever you imagine the Canadian governance structure to be. And importantly, again, coming back to that question or the example of marital rape, when does something exist as a crime? So something that's legal today may have been criminal in the past or may be criminal in the future. So think of animal rights, for example. You know, increasingly people are going vegan and vegetarian and really and starting to see, using some scientific findings that animals may have emotional intelligence similar to humans. What if those scientific advances get so far that then in 50 years it's like, oh my God, can you imagine people used to eat these things which are basically like humans? And we just didn't know it then. So that's just one example. There's also a burgeoning field of child studies that sees kind of mandatory schooling and many kind of mandatory disciplinary actions on minors as potentially being criminal in the future because we're kind of dominating children. So things like mandatory driving ages and drinking ages and things like that, which again, to some people now may defy your common sense, but again, common sense changes as norms and scientific findings come out. So just for sake of time, so today I will be ending early, but normally we will have a 10-minute break at about this time. So I guess I'll just ask you now, does anyone, would you just show of hands if you would rather not have the break, so we'll end early? Or would you rather have the break? Sorry, I'm asking both questions. Show of hands if you don't want the break. Show of hands if you do want the break. Okay, So, sorry, you're out of luck if you put it up. No, there's only one. I'll try to end early, so it'll be fine. If you have to, at any point, if you ever have to really get up and use the washroom, that's fine too. So don't worry about that. So deviance. Sorry, the font's a bit small. So deviance essentially is like crime in that you're violating norms, but sorry, I changed the slide formatting to better than this, but for some reason it didn't save. The key distinction is in that top slide, or the top part of the slide. So when something is deviant, or when a person has been labeled a deviant, it means A, and so you need both of these components. So this is the one important thing from this lecture on deviance, really. It needs to be violating a norm, but it also needs to be strongly disapproved. So, can you think of an example where something violates a norm, but is not strongly disapproved? So try to think of something like that. Just to get our heads around these things. Yep.
If someone doesn't have like a cell phone or social media, like that.
Right.
Weird, but like nobody would really care.
Yeah, no, most people wouldn't say, you deviant, you don't have like the latest cell phone or smart, like why aren't you on Facebook? They'd probably say, oh yeah, there's someone who's like going electricless or whatever, they're deplugging or whatever the term is. Right? Or someone who studies 10 hours a day or something like that, some extreme, right? So you're going against the social norm, because the social norm could be, school's hot, like it depends on your community, right? It's all relative, but it could be, school's this bore, no one likes this class, and then you say, well, actually, I like it, I'm studying 10 hours a day, it's like my favorite thing to do. You're not going to be a deviant, they're not going to, most people wouldn't say that, they would, if anything, they'd say, like, you're a keener or something, but they would imagine that's somewhat normal. So this was so I'll give you the example of my course again after this. But so what makes something deviant is that A, it's violating a norm and it's strongly disapproved. So the reason why something is strongly disapproved is because the norm that you're breaching is seen as very salient to that community. So that's the key distinction there. So someone not having Facebook, that is violating a norm, but it's not disapproved because that norm doesn't have huge resonance or salience. So I'm just using the words resonance or salience, meaning they're not super important to the people. You may be on Facebook every day liking things and posting emojis and whatever, but you're not then going to police someone else and say, no, you have to be doing that. Whereas something like murder, particularly if it's someone you know, that's going to be strongly disapproved because by you, presumably, because you will really identify with that norm and you'll say, no, you can't murder people, that's just wrong. So my example of having YouTube videos and web optioning the class, in my mind, I thought that it was going to be strongly disapproved because there was no precedent for it in the department. I was the first one doing it. And then students, I got good reception from them, and they said, a few students anyway, they said, why don't you then like make a YouTube channel? Why don't you do other things? Why don't you just like go the whole 9 yards with it? So in my mind, I had thought, okay, I'm violating a norm, but then when I told professors too, they're like, oh, that's great, we need more of this. Yeah, it's like good public outreach for the department. And that kind of shocked me because I thought they were going to say, no, you're going against like our vision of what being a professor is. So that's why I said the study of deviance and norms as we progress through the course, you'll see how relative and personal the defining of these things are. And even myself, I mentioned I was a pro gamer or wannabe pro gamer in my teens. I dropped out of high school when I was 16, and I had 2 high school credits. And then when I went back to adult school at age 20, I felt like the biggest deviant in the world. I thought it was almost like people could see that I had no education. And then when I went to U of T, it was the same thing. I just felt that people would like stigmatize me. But people didn't see that, obviously. But in my mind, I was thinking people would strongly disapprove of the norm that I broke. That they would say, what, you dropped out? But that wasn't the reaction of people in university. It was, oh, how great that you came back, and it just never really came up. So again, this isn't to make light of people's issues, but we'll see this later on in my analysis of pedophilia and other topics, that often the definition of deviance is very personal, and we can define our own actions as deviant or normal or not. So deviance, as we've seen, can be criminal or non-criminal. So something that probably would be deviant right now, again, would be for me to have like a whole bunch of face tattoos saying like SOCB50 or SOCB50 or something. They would probably find a way to not hire me again, I would think, just because that would go against the university's image or their U of T Boundless brand, right? And I would say, yeah, Boundless, or what if I just put Boundless all over my face? That would be kind of funny, right? So, and related to that would be hilarious, actually. That would be hard for them to say, right? Because I'd say, I'm a living, like, breathing U of T. Like, I'm U of T Boundless. I could have it, I don't know. That would be tough, right? That would be hard. And so again, as I said, when we call something deviant or criminal, as in the other slides, we're not judging it. We're just, so especially me, I'll use the example of pro gaming because that's close to me. Obviously, I don't think pro gamers are deviant. I just know, I was seen that way by people and people saying, what the heck are you doing? And that's not a real thing. So if I do, by slip of the tongue, call something deviant, I'm just meaning that under my assumption, I think that widespread society or kind of our collective common sense would see it as a bit weird or off kilter or not the right thing to do. On that note, the class I teach on Thursdays, the advanced topics class, is called Deviant Careers, and it's a course I made up a couple years ago just on how people choose jobs that are seen as kind of like, why would you pick that by wider society? So we look at pro gamers, Avon ladies, people that go that like sell things door to door, multi-level marketers, truckers, thieves, all these things that people are like yeah, it's kind of random, but it's not. It's you think like they're all jobs. It's the one that always gets the biggest reaction of truckers. How's that deviant? And I say, well, what if you told your parents after your degree, I'm going to be a trucker? Right? So most people, they would think that no, that's not the route you would take. It would be like being a cab driver. That's not what you do after school. That's what you do like during. So again, the word deviant is more, it kind of gives someone that reaction of like, what? Why are you doing that? So again, I want to, because these are helpful for me, I want to see where everyone's common sense is at. And I think that's part of the utility of having you do it in groups. So write 2 examples of deviant behavior and briefly explain why these behaviors can be considered deviant. So there's no more study questions after this. So you can just write this on the back of that card. So again, you can write it in bullet form, doesn't matter. I just I'll use these as examples throughout the course as well. So you can be creative, you can be whatever you think is like the most legitimate, but just a couple of examples of deviant behavior and a brief explanation of why you think it's deviant. And again, not you, but why you think society thinks it's that way.
Okay.
All right. So does anyone want to give me an example of a deviant behavior? Yep.
Eating a full course meal for class.
Oh.
Fantasy. Yeah.
So why would that be deviant?
Because my personal explanation is that sympathetic introspection, that's I think like really important when when a person like feels, I don't know how to explain it, but you know what I mean. Mm-hmm. Yeah, like when you do something and when your ability to think what other people feel by your actions, and I don't know, that's
Yeah, because it would be, I really want to learn about deviance, but I want to eat that damn food right now, right? So there was an example. Back when I was a TA, there was this person that he would bring KFC every tutorial. And then it became deviant like the 5th time, because I was okay, whatever, and they would sit sort of in the back, and then they were increasingly sitting towards the front. And it almost was like it was getting like smelling more and more delicious, and I was more and more, and I was just like, I'm sorry, please don't bring this to class. Like I said it funnily, but I was just like you're really making me hungry. So you're probably making other people hungry. Like it's like lunchtime and eat it before or something.
5 times?
Yes.
I mean, he was totally doing an experiment on it
I think it was, because he was moving closer, and I'm like, he's probably like, didn't say anything. Yeah, it's like, which tutorial leader will say it? Some will be right away. Others, like, I'm probably somewhere on the dark web or something doing my tutorial. Okay, so eating, fine dining in the classroom. Anything else? Yep.
Cheating on an exam, and that's deviant because it violates the idea that everyone is tested equally and that the grades they earn reflect their true ability.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so that would be seen as disapproved of by people. So remember, deviant is disapproved because other people would say, you know, I worked hard on this, or like a variety of reasons. It could be the university has integrity, you know, you're going against all the things I did, you're making my grade seem lower than it is because you're having higher grades. Yeah.
Isn't that a crime? I was just wondering because...
Yes. So crime and deviant, so something that's deviant can be a crime.
Right.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be. So technically, any crime is pretty well deviant. Unless it's, so what's interesting is, and this is to go to your point about the victimless crimes, those crimes are not deviant to certain people, right? So that's the whole thing. So most crimes would be deviant. So murder, like severe crimes, things that are like public, like the most commonsensical crimes you can think of, those would all be deviant. But the more seemingly victimless ones, even things like embezzlement, and you can imagine Robin Hood stealing like $10 from a super rich CEO. Most people wouldn't think of that as deviant, probably. They would just say, well, you shouldn't have done that. But, you know, yeah. Is there a question? Yeah.
I just wanted to share one of the examples, because we had a couple. So one of the examples that we came up with was on the show, like, Say Yes to the Dress. One of the guys wanted a black wedding dress, and like her family was not having it. So like that's not illegal, but it's, you can consider it disapproved.
Right, it broke the norm and was strongly disapproved. Great example, yeah. Deviance, you know, what's fun about studying it too is that it doesn't always have to be these big severe topics. It can be things, you know, that aren't criminal at all, but that still can cause people a lot of stress. That would be stressful. Yeah. Okay, so I have, just as a fun example of this, so, and this will go into the course management as well. So let me see. I want to go to student view because I don't know what your students see. Okay. So live, you won't get that. So this is to all you web option folks. You won't get that if you're at home. So deviance in action. I'm going to take a deviant. Do you want to be part of the deviant selfie? I'm taking a deviant selfie. Who wants to be part of the deviant selfie? Come on up if you want to be part of the deviant selfie. No, I'm going to do it. It's a selfie. I'm good at taking selfies. I have long arms. Anyone that wants to be part of the deviant selfie, you can. Don't sue me after saying you were coerced into being. You're not going to.
I'm too short.
I'll move. I know I'm tall, so good. See if you're in the frame.
Wait, is everybody in the frame?
Yeah.
Deviant selfie. Okay. Uploading. Deviant pick.
Oh, shoot.
Deviant selfie. Okay. So,
You're not in it.
oh. See, that's yeah. I'll do my own. Oops. I'm not even in my own deviant selfie. That's not even a selfie if the person taking it isn't in it. That's really funny.
Yo, your long arms didn't work there.
I forgot that I was trying to be there.
You gonna post that on the front end? The homepage?
Yeah. Deviant. Oh. Okay. Deviant selfie. Okay.
Are you going to Photoshop yourself in there, or are you going to?
Yes, I'll put my cartoon in that afterwards.
Your Photoshop skills are...
I'm going to use my Photoshop skills. Okay, so this one should be there too. Ta-da! Okay, deviant selfie. So, I made a funny face. So, again, deviance. So, is the deviant selfie truly deviant?
No.
No. So why is it not deviant? It could be.
In this class, it wasn't.
In this class, it's not. Okay. No.
Because we all approved. Like,
We all approve. Right. So what would make it not deviant? If I forced you guys into the deviant selfie, that would make it deviant, right? If I said, or let's say, this was, if I made it for grades, you have to be in the deviant selfie to get grades or something. But this is not, again, deviance can be, doesn't necessarily, things you think of as deviant don't have to be. So deviant selfie. Okay. Okay, so we're almost done. So deviance questions again. And, deviance is a spectrum. When I taught this class before, you can still study something. Let's say you really want to study, a lot of social norms. As society becomes more progressive, we're not totally tolerant of everything yet, but as people become more tolerant, things like tattoos, piercings, having kids out of wedlock, all of these things that used to be deviant aren't anymore. You're still welcome to study those things. People, you can still study things that are, moderately deviant, right? So even me studying gaming, I was studying it more from the perspective of people that really thought it was strange. So I always get that question in my Deviant Careers class of like, how are multi-level marketers and truckers deviant? But by the end of the course, it makes sense because I just mean, they're not typically jobs people think of as careers. And they think something went wrong in your life to lead you in that, or you somehow sold yourself short. So even though something isn't necessarily like publicly disapproved, it can still be disapproved by enough people to kind of make you feel not good about your choice. Right? So I don't want to overwhelm things too much early in the course, but if you think of something that you think, some people think is deviant and therefore it's still important, that's still worth studying. So I don't want to throw out your potential creative ideas. Okay, so typically in deviance, again, the questions we ask, whose rules are being broken? So again, the most kind of wholesale deviant things, those will be things where it's like official rules and laws. They could be relative to a family, so you could have parents that define a lot of things as deviant. If you have strict parents that they say, no eating in the bedroom, no, you have to come home at 10 o'clock. Any of their rules they set up. When they're broken, that would be deviant. In whose interest do these rules operate? So oftentimes someone will see something as being more deviant rather than less deviant if the people in power making the rules, if they seem to be reflecting the community's interests. So if your parents, for example, so this is why, a lot of times teenagers will see the actions of their parents or guardians as very oppressive, but then when they're adults, they'll reflect on it later and say, oh, actually some of those things made sense. They had my best interests in mind. So things like, not being a truant, not skipping school, not getting in fights with your peers, all the taboos they set up for you, those are to prevent you from kind of becoming deviants in that sense. Some rules may not be fair though. So if parents say, to bring up gender, if parents have a son and a daughter, and they control the daughter much more than the son, that's not really fair necessarily. So rules may not necessarily be justified, but often in the person's mind, they think they're doing it to some end. People disagree. So let's say in this course, I had you do all of these assignments that you, let's say I had 5 times the assignments. And in my mind, I said, I really want you, I could be very nice about it and say, I really want you to learn all this. I think it's so important, it'll change your life. But then you come back and say, well, if every course was like that, I wouldn't even have any time to sleep. So in whose interest are they operating? Are they really operating in my interests? Am I a deviant for not doing 10 assignments in your class? Or do the rules need to be changed? Why were the rules there in the first place? Again, we'll see this throughout the course. Were they there to punish and kind of marginalize certain people? Or were they there to really, kind of undo harm or prevent harm? And then who is doing the disapproving? So very important for the deviance question. me taking a selfie and like doing a class selfie, I could tell you, many professors would find that deviant. They would, that I know of anyway, because I have very different kind of role models of professors. I'm sure you can think of some. We won't name them, but there are some people who would say, you know, you're kind of degrading the idea of the university. So anyway, and that's important. That's still important to study, right? Their opinions matter too. And that would have been mine a few years ago, to be honest. I would think, oh no, people are going to spread it online. I'm not going to get teaching positions. But then I realized the world changes. Okay, so now that's it for today of the lecture stuff. Again, this is just meant to be fun and introduce you to all these topics. As I said, it is a reading-intensive course, as we'll see on the syllabus. The readings are short, relatively, but they're dense. So you'll see some weeks they're quite short, but the shorter they are, usually the denser they are, so I've tried to think about that. Not that I'm penalizing you for, like, oh, it's short, I better make it harder. Not that, but there's, you know, these are core, you're getting the first-person perspective of core ideas that influence the field. So I didn't really want to have too many secondary sources, but particularly in the beginning of the term, we do use scans of the online available textbook that I found. So again, I also, aside from the intro class, I almost never assign books. I try to assign articles and books that are available online, just to save money for everyone. No problem. Yeah, my Deviant Careers course unfortunately uses 4 books, but this one, that's the only one just because they're such amazing books though. They're worth reading. But if you ever take that class. And I know students have ways of getting books anyway, so I know those ones you can get through other ways, so it's, but obviously I'm not going to publicize that. Okay, so now navigating the site. So I'm on the student view. So for those of you in upper years, you know we used Blackboard before. I'm the kind, every time I'm like, oh, it's available to students, it took me so long to learn Quarkus, so I always go in student view to make sure everything's there. So this course will be pretty basic on the Quarkus side, because we don't have a whole ton of online submissions or anything. We only have one thing you'll ever be submitting through Quarkus. You know, I might make quizzes or something fun later on, but I'll ask you about things like that in a question today. But for now, we just have the modules page, really. So if you click on modules, you'll see the syllabus as a doc file, the syllabus as a PDF. So I always just download them because sometimes they glitch out on the site. So in terms of the syllabus, so you'll see the office hours are TBA for now. So I actually teach this class at St. George right after this class. Well, not right after, I teach it at 2. So I can't have office hours after after this class. And I last year, when the same thing happened with my policing class, I held office hours before, and then I realized that was horrible because I was making myself get up so early, and no one came. I think one person came the whole term, because who's going to come at 9 a.m.? So, I mean, some people might, but if you ever want to meet me before class, we can try to arrange that. It's just I do live downtown, so it's a little bit difficult for me to get here before 10. I usually arrive here at 9:30, so if you know, I'm happy to talk to you ahead. But I wanted to ask, I'm imagining, just from my experience in as being an instructor over time, I'll test you out with this thing. So I use Mentee Meter. So I know, I want to foster an environment where all of you are like super chatty and knowing one another. But I know that sometimes people like doing things anonymously. So I use this thing called Mentee Meter. So if you have a device, if you can go here, again, you could just answer it, but I want you to learn how to use this. So go to mentee.com and then put in the code 490850. I have a couple other questions too. It's also good because it gives me a record of them. Not that I need to use the record against you or anything, but it's nice. I get to save all the results. Yeah. So, right? Yeah. So I figured that time usually works. That's always when I would do my extra office hours. But I'm open to other times. I can come on Fridays. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, because I don't teach here on Fridays, but I like coming here. I have a nice office. You'll get to see it. I have the corner office. It's not really mine, it's a real professor's, but she hasn't been around, so I get it. So, okay. Okay, what time would work for the person that said no?
Well, then that doesn't make it anonymous anymore.
I know, I need a comment. Okay, okay. Yeah, I know. Okay. Because I want to make sure everyone... Okay, so let me just see. What? Damn it. Okay, so I know that that works. Because I'm on the free one, I can't. Okay, so yeah, I can't. I can only get 3 questions. Damn it. Too lazy to write. Oh. Okay. So this is open-ended. So I'm showing you the different things. Show of hands if anyone's used Mentee Meter before. Only Lawrence's Lit fam, plus you. So my Socio 3 students. Mentee Meter's fun. I discovered it last semester. So it's just a fun thing. It's free. You can do it for anything. And then if you do, I'm scamming them by deleting the answers and just redoing it because I might get the premium at some point.
That sounds a little deviant.
It is. I know. So, yeah. Again, I'm trying to increasingly make my classes more collaborative. So for the one person that it doesn't work, shoot me an email if you like. And I mean, full disclosure, Wednesday 12 to 2 overlaps with the tutorials, but I can maybe sometimes be here. The problem, my teaching schedule next semester, so St. George has like intense semesters, so they're doubled. So I teach Monday and Wednesday from 10 to 12 on next term. So yeah. Yeah, this is like my final, because this is, well, it's not the reason, but this is my final summer at U of T, hopefully, if I graduate. So I'm like going out in a blaze of glory, teaching 5 classes. So, I'm only teaching 3 right now, so it's fine. But next semester, so July, August is like everything coming in. So my days are a bit, I always have Fridays off though. So I can also talk through other means. Oh, how was my weekend? My weekend was good. I was preparing all these slides. No, it was fun. Yeah. Okay, good. All right. So we'll figure out, again, I don't like leaving anyone in the lurch, but because it was just one person, I think that works. But again, I'm open to making other arrangements for people, talking before or after class. Just shoot me a message, whoever you are, and we'll figure something out. But Friday 12 to 2, I can come earlier, later. If that day doesn't work at all, in the next half, I'm available on Wednesdays. In the next, it won't be a problem in July and August, because I can also be here before, after class, in July and August. So I'm imagining in May and June, you won't have a ton of questions for me particularly anyway, because we'll have a final exam and stuff. This course goes quite far out. But I will make alternative arrangements for the students that I do not see. Okay, so we figured that out, so I'll do that. I'll just do Fridays. I'll put in Fridays 12 to 2 for now. So our teaching assistant, Jason, so those of you from intro and presumably and some other classes will know him. So if you want to just briefly introduce yourself.
I'm Jason. I just became a PhD candidate like a week ago, so I finally have a business card, so I'm feeling really special about that. I recognize some faces, so it's really cool to be part of this class. I think Lawrence is a great instructor. So.
And you like Deviance? Sure. You too, we were just talking about it.
Yeah.
This is.
I can get kind of awkward, but I promise tutorials won't be, actually I don't know.
This is what happens when you put people on the spot, right? Yeah. See, I trained myself to not do that, but it's okay. I'm joking. It's fine. It's fine. It's good. It's candid. People like candid. Okay, so he will have office hours at various points. So again, we'll do the same thing. Maybe in tutorial you can do the same thing. Ask people what works, type of thing. So So the course description, they always leave these usually pretty generic so that the instructor can do whatever they want, just so you know. But so this is going to be about how deviance and normality are constructed. Again, I'm inserting a lot of stuff on crime just because of what I've historically taught. Again, I've taught a policing course several times, taught about criminal careers and other things. So I think it's important to kind of start off with crime and move to deviance and kind of see how they're linked. The objectives are pretty simple. I want to introduce you to a range of theories, but again, we're always questioning them with common sense. It's not just saying, okay, I learned a theory, this is it, but we're really thinking about the extent to which we can actually use these to think through puzzling questions. And we'll see that the one big assignment, so I decided, is again very different from my intro where we have a bunch of smaller assignments. In this class, we have one large one, but that tutorials will be designed to help you with throughout. So there's no official proposal or anything like that, but you will have many opportunities to show drafts and show your ideas to us ahead of time. So all of the class materials are available under course materials. So I didn't actually call it that, it's just a module, I think. So yeah, so under readings, everything's there. So class 2 R1 means class 2 reading 1. So this is, you don't have to read them in the order that I put necessarily, but this is the order I would suggest. So for next week, you'll see class 2 R1, class 2 R2 will correspond with, I'll go back to that stuff after. To May 14th, class 2, classicism and positivism, tyranny, that's the chapter, R1, and then Tillier, that's 2. So you see, these are pretty short. And these ones, so again, I try not to, most of the reading, none are super long, but they can get difficult. I will tell you ahead of time what you should focus on as you read also. Okay, so class format and requirements. So this is, I am trying to make, every class I teach, I try to make more and more discussion-based and interactive. So just as a note, or preamble, I guess, I love web option, and after using it from last year, they don't offer it at St. George. It's, I think, in pilot phase or something, so I would do it there otherwise. The one potential drawback is that students don't necessarily come to class. I would appreciate it if you could still try to come to most, if not all, of the lectures and use web option to watch things a second time. So really, I think the students, and I know because I taught a big class with over 400 people, almost all of the students that did well were ones that came to class. So like I recognize them, and it's good. You know, again, who doesn't want to nurture that study buddy relationship, right? And it's fun, and sometimes I'll bring treats and I'll do little bonus things. So I'll try to add incentive to come, but you know, if the class is like 4 people or something, it's going to be a little bit rough. So just think of it too. It's a pretty small class. I think we only have 33 people enrolled. So if it's like the victimless crime thing, right? If everyone says, oh well, no one will notice, then I'll have an empty class, and then I'll just be dancing around to the camera. Although that could be interesting. Maybe my lecture would change. I don't know. That would be a good social experiment, right? Everyone go online and you make like SOCB50 trolls Facebook group, and then you just say, let's all not go, and let's see what happens in the video. That would be an interesting experiment. No, but not for me though, obviously. Okay, so evaluation. I thought it would be funny in the air of deviance. Also, I deviated from the normal kind of evaluation metric or whatever. So 10, 20, 30, 40. So nice and clean and simple, so you know what things are worth. So participation. The bulk of that will be coming from tutorials on a pretty well pass-fail basis, but some of that will be coming from the additional things I do in lecture. So it's not super quantified. It's more a general sense of what we get of have you been participating in class and or tutorials. So if you really can't come to one, they can kind of balance out. Again, we don't have to be super strict on that. You'll see on Quercus, though, that you will kind of get a point for when you go to tutorials. So at least you'll have something you can track. But then when you add those up, you'll see, oh wait, there's only 7. Where are the other kind of 3 points coming from? So again, that's the quality of your participation in tutorials and or in here. So again, not meant to police you or deviantize you or anything, but just to get you engaged in the class. So these are the tutorial dates. So again, the syllabus, everything will be there. So the tutorials, as you saw on the registrar's website, or the timetable website, are in MW223, and they meet from 1 to 2 and 2 to 3 on Wednesdays. So I would have preferred having them on the same day, but I don't schedule them. So you have to come out here twice. And again, unfortunately, Wednesday just doesn't work for me because of my other teaching commitments right now. Otherwise, I would come on Wednesdays too. But as you'll see, Wednesdays, there's only a few Wednesdays that would happen before July anyway. So you'll see starting next week. So for now, you just need to know there's one next week. And I'll always remind you in class. And you'll see number 7 will be the last tutorial. And that will be in class and led by both Jason and myself. And that will be an exam prep. And so that I'm open to ideas. But last year, what we did was we had, or in the intro class, we did a Kahoot game, which was kind of fun. Yep.
I thought that Tuesday was a UTSC Monday, because I have a Monday class that has said that the Tuesday the 30th is the extra Monday day, because so many Mondays are cancelled, so does that make sense?
Yeah.
So can you just double check?
Okay. Thanks, yeah, because it should, as far as I know, it should still be, yeah, I know what you mean, because that would be the makeup Monday for them.
Because I have a class that will clash with that, and yesterday in the lecture she said, like, you won't have Tuesday classes on July 30th, it's a UTSC Monday. She was like very definitive.
Okay.
So,
All right, thanks. I'll definitely look into that. Yeah. I'll definitely look into that and then I'll change that if need be.
sorry.
No. It's good to know.
She could be wrong.
Yeah. Because that's weird that they would cancel an actual class. So it's to do that. Because usually that works. Yeah. Because then you're creating a whole other you're opening another can of worms.
Yeah.
But yeah, thanks. I'll look into that. So here are tutorials again. So please, you have to attend every tutorial in order to receive credit. Some tutorials will cover writing skills. Others will give you things to debate. Again, on crime and deviance, we have a lot to discuss, as you can see. You can miss up to one tutorial without losing credit. So please, you don't have to send us any notes or anything. Same with class participation. Again, we're not like rigidly looking for these things, but we want to see that you've been to the majority of them and that you've participated well. And again, you can earn kind of an easy 6 points, up to 6 there, just by going to 6 of them, or the last lecture. And as I said here, they're kind of the gray zone area. There'll be activities during the semester that will count towards your general participation grade because it's out of 10.
I have a question about that.
Yeah.
Do the Mentee Meters count for that?
No, just because they're anonymous. Yeah, so the Mentee Meter is fine. So it's just the things you hand in. That's all I would see. And hopefully once I get to know you too, then I can kind of, because it's a pretty small class again, I'll probably just be able to have a sense of who is here. So again, that added participation is just stuff that I do myself. So again, I won't be penalizing anyone for that. It's just kind of a way for people to get a little bit extra. So the one big assignment, so this is, I always try to do assignments like this in my upper year classes. It's a fair amount of work like anything, but it should be a lot of fun. So theorizing crime and deviance. So I will attach, I don't want you to think too much about this now because it's not due for quite a long time. But every week, as we'll see through the themes, we're exposed to one or more theories. And so what I want you to do in your final assignment, and again, you'll have opportunities to workshop it in tutorials and in lectures, but I want you to think of one kind of act of crime or deviance. So, say it could be general, like theft, or it could be specific, like getting face tattoos, whatever it is. Think of one thing that you can theorize or make sense of using 2 theories. And so the important thing is, as we'll learn, all of these theories have strengths and limitations. So you want to think, okay, it's not just I can explain it using these 2 theories, but it's necessary to explain them using these 2 theories. So we're going to work that up. So you may not have any ideas about that now. But let's say you're looking at theft, and you say, okay, people that took social disorganization approach tended to emphasize neighborhood influences, but people also make big decisions, so I'm bringing in social control theory. And that's good too, because the reason why social disorganization theorists didn't use social control is because they said that made too much out of people's personal choices. So I'm blending these two, and for XYZ reasons, this will, provide a good argument, and so on and so on. So this is as a second-year class, this is designed to get you writing, more in the argumentative university way, and building up after kind of what I taught in intro, where you would look at, you would compare and contrast, but here you're really combining. So upper year students should already have done some similar things to this. I don't have any real different expectations on this. My essays always are some version of this. But I think this is good because this lets you study anything. Again, anything that you're interested in, criminal or deviant, and you can make a case for something that's not, formally deviant, as long as it's deviant in some sub-community, that's fine. So pro gaming would be fine. Being a YouTube streamer even would be fine, because again, think, hey mom and dad, I'm gonna drop out of school and be a streamer. May not get the best reaction, right? So these things can be more locally defined. It doesn't have to be, totally right or wrong. So that's worth 30% of your final grade and due July 16th. And then we have 2 tests. So we have a midterm on June 11th. I'll talk more about the content later, but that'll be on everything we've covered starting from today up to class 5. And it'll be a combination of kind of conceptual definitions, short answers, and or essay questions. And unlike in my intro class, I give you choice of questions on this. So it'll be like answer 1 of 2 essay questions, answer 2 of 3 short answers, 5 of 6 definitions, something like that. And then the final exam period is when the final exam is, and that will be cumulative, but more heavily weighted towards the later things. So and I'm open to ideas. One thing I'm thinking of is having maybe some core definitions from things we covered in the first half, in the second test, and then because the first test is worth half as much, maybe just having some short answers and an essay question. So having it a bit shorter, and then adding in the definition component in the second half. But I'm open to ideas as we go. Once you start doing the readings and attending more lectures, you'll have more of a sense of kind of where things are going. So in terms of the course schedule, again, today was a general introduction. We then move on to what are called classicism and positivism in criminology. So those may sound difficult, but these are just, again, the kind of 2 first ways that people theorized or thought about crime and deviance. We'll see the context was a major kind of crime upsurge hundreds of years ago in the contemporary West, so Britain mostly. And people turn to either the classical school, which was that people are choosing to do criminal activities because they may not know that they're criminal, or they may not know that there's other ways of doing things. And we need to teach people not to do those things and create laws that will taboo those things. Versus the positivist one, which looked more at how certain criminals or certain people may do criminal or deviant activity because they just are criminal or deviant. Things like correlating skull sizes with homicide rates and race and all these things. So we'll see how those 2 schools kind of served as launch pads for the rest of modern criminology. Then we jump right into the kind of big dominant theories of the field. So social disorganization and the Chicago School, a direct response to classicism and positivism, saying, hey, actually it's much more environmental. Then social disorganization and strain. So then saying it's not just like it is environmental, but it's also impacting people's emotions and feelings and values. So we're looking at the strain that the environment puts on people. So it's different levels of analysis, saying we've said it was totally individual. Now we're saying it's the environment. Now we're saying it's the environment impacting the individual. Then social control goes more individual again on that note of saying people that commit crime or don't do so based on the levels of control they feel. So you see the class kind of ebbs and flows in that. So those are the kind of classic theories we cover. Then we have the test. Then we have reading week. Then we move to cultural theories. So now that we've looked at, you know, how people are socially controlled, how they are attached to society, we then start to scale down a little bit and look at how subgroups or what are called subcultures influence the kind of crime or deviance or not that people engage in. So these are things like peer circles, clubs, gaming associations, whatever you can think of, things that may make people more likely to deviate. And then we end the course with 3 weeks, so the kind of theories that I think bring everything together, what I'm calling, based on the Birbeck article, situational theories. So situational theories are more micro level in scope, and they look at how people make what I kind of call the deviant decisions. So it's very much, because my own research is focused more on that, more on people's decision making. So the last 3 weeks, or the second, aside from the last lecture, they all focus on that. So we look at the context of the situation, kind of the moment when someone's making the decision to deviate. We then apply it to robbers and bread salesmen. So that's from these are from my Deviant Careers class. So we look at bread salesmen that were kind of coerced by their bosses to steal from their customers. So it's dated obviously, but it's a kind of fun thing. And then applications 2, we look at hitmen, so murders, and then we look at pedophiles. So again, taking the situation as the unit of analysis, how do people make these deviant decisions? What do they think about it? What does it result in? And then lastly, future directions. So 2 very different perspectives we end the class with. So one looks at in a unified theory of crime and delinquency. We look at biosocial perspectives. So we'll see a few videos throughout the term of people still using things like genes and brain scans, but not in a positivistic way, more looking at things like latent genes, things that can get triggered by traumas, and seeing to what extent can we use biology without being biological reductionists. And then on the other hand, then we have a feminist, we have an intersectional approach to crime. And so we end in 2 avenues, which seem different from the outset, but actually have a lot of commonalities. So I think it's just an exciting way to see that the field is going in many different directions, and that really many theories that were hitherto kind of thrown out are reviving again for different ways for different reasons. And then July 30th, which thanks again, I'll figure out to see if that's a real day. But we will have a final exam prep class. I'll look into the date. So all the little nitty-gritty technical things are on the syllabus. I don't think I really need to go over them. For my students, for those just coming into second year, it's very much the same as for intro. So please email me or Jason if you imagine that if you think you'll be late with an assignment and you need the U of T medical certificate to do that, the verification of illness. Same with if you need to write a makeup test, and the final exam is done by the registrar. So again, we don't have a whole bunch of deadlines. We have one essay and the one test really. So everything else, again, unless the situation is very extreme, we don't really want notes for the tutorials or missed lectures, because again, we have the one opportunity where you can miss one. If you have to miss several though, it may be beneficial to talk to me ahead of time. But I am open, of course, if you have extenuating circumstances, but just don't feel obliged to email me about missing those all the time. Okay, so going to Mentee Meter again. So as I'm trying to make the class more collaborative, again, it's easier for me to collaborate if you want to be part of the collaboration. So, I do little things like the study buddy activities, but I just have a couple questions left. So in terms of lecture and tutorials even, what kind of in-class activities do you enjoy most? Because, I got the idea of Mentee Meter and Kahoot from students last year. So I like to see what y'all like. Yeah, I still have to figure out how to best make a Kahoot for this class because I don't have multiple choice. I'm not using multiple choice for the tests, but they can still be useful, I think, in class, just to get you. Yeah, I just have to think of what kind of questions to ask. All right, seems Kahoot's the winner. Oh, good. Someone likes the study buddy questions. Okay. All right. I also have another idea, but I have to refine it before I put it out into the world. No, it wasn't deviant. I will bring food sometimes. I won't bring sleeping though, because that's not something I can bring. Okay. All right. So this is a new, I've never used this model. Oh, I didn't even give it a thing, so that doesn't make sense. How much of each do you want in tutorials? Okay. So this, basically I'm asking you, so I have an idea of what I want the tutorials to be, but again, I want to make sure I'm in sync with all of you. So tutorials are, in my mind, always rooted towards these three things. So I just kind of want to know what you think is the most important. So again, we have discussion, we have essay writing, because we have essays and tests, right? So essay, test, content overview, or talking about ideas. Obviously, I want all three to be somehow blended, but I just want an idea. Because then we can design the tutorials around that. Okay. Yeah. So what I was thinking for this, next week, because it's early, will mostly be peer discussion. And then the rest of the tutorials. Oh, good, it's exactly even. The tutorials will be devoted to then having you understand content, and then with an eye to writing an essay about it or writing a test about it. So we'll kind of alternate between that, but they'll all be based on something, because I think Jason will be coming to most of the lectures. Right, so he can get a sense of what was difficult. That's why it's important that people come and talk. So, if things are stumping you, then he can cover those in class, and then after covering them, can then say, okay, imagine you were writing about this, or you were answering a question about this. So we can have kind of example questions that could be on a test, and also essay writing prompts, right? So, okay, good. So that's, all right, so everything's pretty even Steven there. Okay, so before I let you go, and sorry, I ended up, it started with my intro class, I guess. I always used to end, or think I ended early, and then because they gave me 3 hours for that class, I always take so long. So I'm sorry, usually my first lectures are an hour, but I also had more questions. Okay, so talk about deviance, so I'm refreshing the page just to see if anything changed. Okay, no. So, by a goal of this class, I want to be Lawrence Williams with more subscribers than not Lawrence Williams. So, right? So I want to be. I mean, I'm showing first, so I'm happy about that. But I want to have more. I mean, they don't even have a description. They have 88 videos, so that's a lot. But yeah, I want more subscribers. So I did something deviant last term on this channel. Oops. Well, I did a lot of probably things deviant, but one. I made it public because, and again, it's funny how things work. When I first made it, I said, oh my God, no. And then I made it public because students told me to make it public. So you'll see what I mean. So I sometimes do funny things. So this was me. This isn't the deviant one.
Hello there.
But you can get a sense of what most of my videos are like.
I'm Lawrence. Just in case you didn't know. Today, I'm going to do something different. Are you ready? Because I am. Why do people think
Okay, so there I'm pretending to be Marx, Faber, and Durkheim, and I'm having a conversation with myself. So if you ever want a refresher on theory, okay, but that's not the deviant one. So you see how things build. I had like my little videos and my lectures, and then I have that, and then for the final. Because there's one thing to say you're lit, and then there's another one to look up on YouTube lit music that youths are listening to. And then you find,
Yeah, breakfast at Tiffany's and bottles of dollars. Girls with tattoos, who get it in trouble. All myself, all my favorite things. In prison, yeah. To establish, rather be tied up with calls and my strings. Write my own checks like I write what I sing.
yeah. You can see the thing for yourself. But see, so I try to do fun things, but I made a study video. I made an 1.5-hour long study video too. So they're in that one. So that was normal. But I do want to make videos for this class. So in the next Mentee Meter session, I'll kind of ask what would be useful. But since the Deviant Selfie took off, that was just spontaneous because I wasn't going to ask anyone to be part of the Deviant Selfie, but then they wanted to. So here's looking at, now you're committed, everyone that was part of the Deviant, no you're not, don't worry. But some sort of collaborative video would be fun too. So I'll think of something to do. Again, always something that's useful. Obviously that video wasn't useful, I just did that as I pretended to leave the classroom and I put on that video as a study video, or that was the plan. Making something more serious in that way would be useful. All right, so please just read the assigned readings for next week and come with questions if you have any. And then that's all.
Do you want the...
Oh yeah, please hand in, yeah, I always forget. Please make sure your names are on the card.